Okay, and now we're in game 3 of this 4-game series. Once again, we have Stuart in the blue again, playing as a saucer this time, and his opponent, Squeeler, who's playing on his creamy mommy Smurf, is playing as a striker. Pilots don't matter. This time we're seeing Duel, which is a nice change from the last 2 games, which were on Storm and Biohazard, respectively. Now we're back to a map that we're all familiar with. And so we can see how this game on Duel compares to what you normally see on Duel. And then again, considering the players, I think Squeeler is definitely not the most conventional player. If he was playing conventionally, he would be very bad. And if these were conventional games, I would say instantly that Stuart would win by a landslide. On the other hand, he's spamming a lot of Sams and Dillos. And I don't know if Stuart was not very well prepared to deal with that in the last 2 games. On the other hand, he was also playing as an Angel, which might be the worst mech to be dealing with Sams as. Now he's a Saucer. And I'm not exactly sure if Saucer's any better versus Sams. Oh! Because 1, it's really squishy, and 2, Sams do a lot of burst damage. Actually, I think they're less bursty now. They're a little more consistent now. Less burst, but at the same time, that's still... I'd still consider it burst because they're so squishy, but they're glass cannons. So they can do a lot of damage really quick, and then they usually die. And so as a result, you get like a semi-burst effect where they do a ton of DPS up front, and then as they die, the effective DPS of a group of Sams goes down because the amount of Sams in it decreases. So yeah, that might be interesting to observe. And so it's interesting because Stuart is still using that gen, and also he's turned the arm on. Now the arm is something that you can toggle on and off as you get near an outpost, although you can no longer use the arm while you're far away. So yeah, the nature of the arm has changed quite a lot. So yeah, these Sams have taken out all these Goliaths here. Being able to being able to burst down the Goliath actually before it could get a single shot off, I think, because the Goliaths had to rotate. Oh, okay, looks like bombs against the Sams. So Stuart sees Sams and Dillos. How does he respond? Bombs. Of course, I don't think he landed any on the Dillos. And also, there's a lot of Sams still alive. And yeah, he can't stay on the ground death raying that because he doesn't have the hit points to do that. That Seeker is going to die very rapidly. 950 hit points. Ouch, not much. Actually, yeah, a lot of this outpost is gone for now. Stuart98 needs to get the heck out of there. Sams are very good now. I'm going to say that. Perhaps they should have their DPS toned down a bit, because their capacity as glass cannon units right now. If you use them, I don't even know if Squeeler is using them correctly, I want to say, because he's using them in conjunction with Dillos, which are sort of glass cannons in their own right, although they're no longer as glass cannon-y now that Hyper Dillos don't exist, as I mentioned in the previous game. But on the other hand, imagine Sams behind, let's say, a Grinder, which can tank a lot of shots. If you have Sam, and also, of course, the Grinder would attract the aggro from most of the units, because most units fire by prioritizing the closest targets. And so as a result, the Sams would be they would have an opportunity, they would be free to do a lot of damage pretty much. And so I think Sams are, also Rebels are a good unit too, I guess, which would work well with Sams, because Rebels don't do that much damage except for against low armor targets, but at the same time they're relatively tanky. They're pretty tanky units. They have heavy armor, really heavy armor for their hit points actually, and for their cost, while on the other hand Sams are going to be low armor because they're infantry. And so as a result, the units that counter Sams are not usually the units that counter Rebels. I guess you could apply the same thing to Armadillos, because Armadillos have like medium high armor. I guess you could. Oh, whoa! Okay, so the Armadillos 8-2 light mines there. The Sams, I think, did not, which is lucky for Squeeler, because if the Sams had some of that. Oh, it looks like 2 Archies are on the field. If they had been positioned a little more over here, and they would have been able to fire a little longer without being attacked. And that might have been pretty effective versus Armadillo and Sam, actually. But yeah, Stuart is not doing good this game. I sort of have to question the wisdom of going Saucer against a person who's spamming Armadillos and Sams, because Sams do a lot of mech damage, and Armadillos are actually probably the best tanks versus mechs. No, if the mech gets close. Because Armadillos tend to rotate pretty quickly. They do a lot of they do relatively high damage for their numbers because they're glass cannons, and so often you'll see. Because when I was using Armadillos versus Gemini and Longhorn, what I definitely noticed early on was that the Armadillos were more likely to get kills on enemy mechs than the other tanks, and I think part of that might not necessarily be because of the Armadillo statistics, but also because players would tend to underestimate them. They'd see a certain amount of Dillos and they'd think, okay, I'm dealing with tanks, I can rotate again around them, and then I can kill them with my mech without much danger to myself. But the Armadillos actually surprisingly, they had a habit of surprising a lot of players, a lot of good players even, dying to Armadillos because they kind of underestimated the DPS potential. And then add Sams onto that, and it's even worse. And of course, compounded with the squishy mech without any tanky pilot, because that Beppo doesn't do anything anymore. Okay, mid outpost is neutralized. Looks like Stuart is slowly retaking ground, taking advantage of the fact that Armadillo and Sam, although it's effective initially, it doesn't have much staying power. If you can survive long enough, you can win a battle of attrition. On the other hand, can Stuart win a battle of attrition? He's been losing units of his own. Only has 3 Gemini now that are headed on the field. 2 of them are going to die. One of them is going to die to creeps, actually, and the other 2 are really low. This outpost has been retaken, although this outpost has lost its defenses. But at the same time, Stuart was not placing units from his queue. He needs to drop a couple units actually out of his queue so he can create more units. Actually, he's actually making units over here. That's really interesting. Okay, that's a bug with the spectator UI. I can't switch to where I want to be on the map because the queue is blocking it. Okay, that needs to be fixed. I think optimally what Carbon could do with the queue is that they could place 6 units here, another 6 here. That might work. And also they should move this up one. Yeah. New queue UI not the best. It needs to be fixed. Also, some other problems with it, which... Okay, yeah, it looks like those heavy mines. One will be abducted, one will be disarmed by a healing unit. Okay. And so, Squeeler, I don't know if he expects a push from this direction. Gosh, I can't even navigate this area. I can't navigate the map the same way I'd normally do. That's a serious issue that needs to be resolved. But on the other hand, this is a very early beta, and this is a very early test version of Strike. So yeah, there's a lot of problems. They're probably all going to be fixed by the time Strike launches. So yeah, Squeeler, seeing that push, decided to retaliate with a kind of a base trade style push, except for assuming that Stuart doesn't react with the base trade. Assuming he reacts with defense, this is not enough to end the game. On the other hand, there are some reinforcements, although because of the timings of this, most of these units will be dead by the time these arrive, although the damage done to the fort will be lasting, of course. But yeah, Stuart needs to get his defensive units blocking. Oh, and that's really interesting now. You can... I think it'd still be better to have the... But the thing is, when you have a T-99 on top of the fortress, it means it isn't blocking. Where is Stuart? What? Rebels are not going to win this base. Oh my god. If Stuart had deployed defensive units here, he might have survived this. Instead, he's going to try to base race this, and he's not going to... He doesn't have anything blocking. This is a bunch of armor... Oh. Okay, so that was a serious panic-induced misplay by Stuart98 in the end there, I think. Because I'm not entirely sure if he would have survived if he had defended. But his decision to try to base race with 3 rebels and a bunch of tanks that were not in a position to reach the fort on time, was just absolutely suicidal. I think if he had any chance of winning that game, it was by defending that, switching a unit in his loadout out to lunchboxes, building a lunchbox, and then retaking mid, which is now mostly defenseless, and then also continuing to bolster up the defenses on the outpost that he took from Squeeler. One of Squeeler's nears, and he could have used that close outpost as a staging ground to attack Squeeler later in the game. But he didn't have any way of winning that game in the short run. He had to, my opinion is that he should have tried to hold out, because I think the game was starting to tilt in his favor, actually, because Squeeler was starting to run out of steam. That's what I was observing. That's what it looked like to me, at least. But Stuart just gave him the fort, unopposed, with a single T99, not even in blocking position. So now heading on to Game 4. Once again, I did cast Game 4 first. I was not aware that Game 4 was part of a series, actually. So as a result, I don't mention the previous games at all. I don't mention that it's part of a series. Hope that doesn't bother you guys.